See everybody's coming in. Welcome, everybody. We're sitting at about 85, 87. The number is creeping up nice and quickly. So yeah, thank you all for joining. Thank you to our guests for spending this Thursday morning with us, and definitely thank you to our panelists. I see we're still letting people in, and lovely. I think we can get to kicking things off as a couple of more people join the room. I know we've got a lot of stories to share, a lot to talk about today, so I don't want to spend too much time. And there we go. Amazing. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. The Lekker Network is so excited to host this webinar, She Who Didn't Wait, to celebrate the phenomenal women within the Lekker Network and share their stories and really just tell a story about phenomenal women who didn't wait for permission. And we're really excited to have you as part of this conversation. So without further ado, let me get into some of the introductions. My name is Madeline. I am one of the co-founders of the Lekker Network and CEO at FDC, and I'm joined by my co-host Sherelle, who leads our Gauteng Lekker Network chapter. And together, we're just really excited to guide today's conversation. Like I mentioned, our theme is She Who Didn't Wait, which is a celebration of women who didn't wait for permission to do amazing things. And at the Lekker Network, we're proud to have these women as part of our community. And today, you're going to hear a little bit about how each has forged her own path, leading with courage, with creativity, and definitely also with tons of conviction. I'm going to hand over to Sherelle to speak a little bit more about our global members and a little bit more about today.
Thanks, Madeline. Yes, before you do the introductions of our panel members, just looking at the screen, yourself and Michelle's joining us from Cape Town, myself and Thandi from Johannesburg. We have Tracy all the way from the UK, Nerine, the Netherlands, and Lauren all the way from Dubai. What a fantastic representation of just how global the Lekker Network is, but not just the Lekker Network in its entirety. We more than 100 women within the network that are spread across 22 countries and 5 continents, and we've only launched March this year. That's sensational. And I'm so excited to just watch those numbers grow as more women of our caliber join us and join this table, because we want to make the table bigger. So to our audience that are joining us, both ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We're so happy to have you with us. Madeline, do kick us off on this highly anticipated conversation.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sherelle. Without further ado, let's meet our panelists. First up is Thandi Kunene, and Thandi is the head of corporate affairs and engagement at L'Oreal South Africa, which is absolutely amazing. With over 20 years in FMCG and beauty, she is a dynamic leader known for building incredibly strong relationships and driving meaningful impact. So welcome, Thandi.
Thank you.
Excited to have you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Next up is Michelle Eglin, founding president of the SparkX Foundation. Michelle is a change advocate who helps South Africans spark inner transformation for outer change. And she is phenomenal at reimagining what's possible for our collective future as South Africans and South Africa. Welcome, Michelle. Really excited and just loving this relaxed garden vibe that you have. I think we all wish we were out there with you.
I wish that you guys were here too.
Amazing. Joining us from Dubai is Lauren Haworth, a growth leader whose career spans global marketing, sustainability partnership, and amazingly climate tech. She has experience from founder to advisor and brings an incredibly rare perspective on how leadership and culture shape young companies and young minds. Welcome, Lauren. Really excited to have you.
Excited to be here. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. We're also joined by Tracy Kriel, who's dialing in from the UK, as Sherelle mentioned, the founder of Collage Recruitment. And Tracy has more than 2 decades of experience of blending tech and human touch to help organizations attract and retain top talent. So welcome, Tracy.
Thank you.
Lovely. And finally, last but certainly not least, Nerine Jones, who's sitting in Amsterdam and just gave us a preview of her Dutch, which is sounding really, really great. And Nerine is a personal brand and style expert with a career spanning South Africa, Qatar, the Netherlands, and Nerine helps leaders build confident, high-impact personal brands for women and men rooted in trust and credibility. And these are just some of the many, many women within our network who didn't wait. I think this will be the first of many of these sessions that we're going to have because the list was long, and we've got so many more beautiful conversations to have with our members. But today it's about these panelists here. They've created amazing opportunities. They've shaped their industries and inspired others along the way. And today we get to learn from their journeys. So welcome, and let's jump into it. All right. So kicking off with our first question, and I think this is really tied to the theme of She Who Didn't Wait. The first question is, what's one thing that you did while you were scared and glad you didn't wait until you felt quote unquote ready? And Michelle, I think it feels like you are just ready to answer this question. So I'm gonna hand the baton to you, and if you can chat about this, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I just want to bear witness to all the women in the room and all the men in the room and all the stories in the room. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that each person in this room has an extraordinary story and one that we can learn from. And I think when I look at my personal journey and learning from my own experience, and I look at moments where I felt unsure before leaping, I think what was most important was, am I waiting consciously, right? Am I reflecting in that moment? Am I shifting my gaze inward? Am I working through something that's going on within me as I wait? So that waiting becomes rather productive, really, because that waiting triggers new insight through that reflection that you do while waiting. And those moments have resulted in very interesting decisions and very courageous ones. And so waiting can be positive and can have actually some great value in our transformation journeys. But the challenge was at times when I was not fully conscious about that waiting. I think those were the times when I was being hijacked by the waiting or sabotaged by the waiting. And I think I kind of sort of oscillated between the two in my life. There have been times where I've been conscious about the fact that I was waiting, right, before leaping, and other times where I think I was so busy and distracted that I was in a doing mode. I was doing things that weren't authentically me. And that really distracted me from pausing intentionally because I was just, on that hamster wheel. I was just doing, but I wasn't being very conscious in the moment. And so waiting for me has really been twofold. There's been a positive, very productive sort of outcome to waiting at times, where I created reflective spaces and was able to really reflect and gather new insight about myself and my journey through my experience. And there were other times where that waiting was really just sabotaging my way forward. Another thing that I like to think about when I reflect on my own experiences, ultimately, every person on this call, every human being, so every single person on the planet is born and shall die. And so this notion of thinking about death and grounding myself, in this idea of death does trigger anxiety, right? And that anxiety can either propel us forward or it can sabotage us. So alongside waiting, thinking about death as a grounding, to remember that firstly, we all shall die. And it's rather dark to bring this to this call that's full of energy and light, but it's something that binds humanity. It's something that connects each of us. And so I think it's also important that we ground ourselves in that shared human experience. And while we wait, think about, is this a conscious waiting? Or maybe let me get on the balcony, let me observe myself. Am I waiting consciously? What am I waiting for? How is this waiting propelling me or sabotaging me? And then just to ground this reflection in this notion of death, because death is real and it's part of all our experiences and all our journeys collectively. And so I hope that answers the question, Madeleine. But thanks so much for kicking it off. And I'm sorry to bring death to the center of this conversation, but if
No.
it sounds to us, I hope it would propel us positively forward.
Absolutely. Michelle, thank you so much for kicking us off with that. I think you are cracking open new facets of this conversation that we didn't know were there and needed to be opened up. So really appreciate that. I think there's a lot of grounding ideas there.
Michelle,
Yeah, beautiful
I
perspective.
love that you're keeping it real. Honestly, I think that's so important in a conversation like this. Keep it real. And the thought of conscious waiting, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. I've never thought of that. There's a book in my bookshelf called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Love it.
But that little pause of conscious waiting is powerful. It's really powerful. So thank you.
Amazing. Beautiful. Nerine, I know you expressed particular interest in kind of the ready question, highlighting the search that we all have for permission, for battling imposter syndrome. So I think it would be great to get your take on the question. What's one thing you did scared?
Yes, oh great. Thank you for the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to be here. I think for me, moving to the Netherlands was just a huge time of worry and anxiety and thinking, I've built this business in the Middle East and then that idea of giving it all up and starting over and then not feeling qualified to go to a new country. I'm now based in the Netherlands, and then start a new business, start all over again. And yes, Madeleine, like you said, the imposter syndrome and you not being qualified, not having this degree, or not even speaking the language, the local language, eloquently. And so all these things just crept up in my mind, and just the fear and I think there was definitely waiting, Michelle. I'm not sure if it was conscious waiting, but more of a fear of, I don't want to, I'm scared. I am absolutely petrified of taking this leap and starting new and starting all over again. But however, as we all know, and so as Michelle brought this grounding idea of death, there's also the growth, right? We need to grow, and this is also, if you think about that seed that grows in the deep, in the dark, and it needs the rain and it needs the sunshine, and as we just burst through the soil and grow, and so I think that was for me just that journey of just planting the seed of this personal branding experience I even went through, because new culture, new climate, it was a rude awakening, and it's that, and I just realized, you know what, it's that story. It's like Michelle also said, it's that story, it's that skill stacking, and slowly but surely, in that growth, in the momentum, things start coming together, and that's going to give you that courage to step up, and actually go out and do the thing that you need to do. But is the imposter syndrome still there? Yes, definitely. I think that's a process that we all go through, and but we need to keep that momentum. We need that growth, because it's we can't stay stagnant and just think, okay, I'm ready, but how? No, it's in that in the momentum, in the movement.
Nerine, I actually have a question to ask you. I find it so interesting how, you spend quite a lot of time in Qatar. And in Qatar, the environment is so different. The culture is so different. They're guided by their religion.
Yes.
And some of their social norms, it's gender segregation, right?
Yes.
Where boys, girls, men, women, they sit separately from each other. It's not a negative thing. It's just how they're guided by their culture and religion. And being a personal brand and style expert, a lot of women have to cover themselves.
Yes.
I'm so curious how your transition from the South African context, going to Qatar and styling women on the other side,
Yes.
what did you have to unlearn about yourself or your belief about how women are meant to be portrayed? What did you have to unlearn in order to be successful within that profession as a style expert within an environment like Qatar?
Oh, wonderful. Great question, Cheryl. Wow. Yeah, and that's quite a loaded question, but I think ultimately being in a very male-dominated environment in Qatar in the Middle East, you know, the women struggle to show up with their femininity. They struggle just to be the women with colors and colorful patterns and prints, and perhaps even floral prints. They came to me quite scared to wear those type of clothing, because I feel that they will not be taken seriously, as you said, in this very male-dominated environment, men and women separated. And I found that they were just wearing suits, you know, very dark colored suits. And that saddened me. And I think, you know, I think just coming from South Africa and coming from this beautiful rainbow nation, I just came with color, and I went back to science and to understand, and I really unpacked it for my clients in terms of what colors actually mean, and bring a bit of a new perception as well. And then with patterns and prints, we can still, with our attire, still come across very serious, and we can come across professional and be taken seriously with a beautiful abstract print or pattern. So I came with a different perspective, and I think that gave me a bit of a segue into that market of, oh, okay, I can wear color, but which colors will actually be grounded and not be too alarming, because I don't want necessarily be in the spotlight. But if I wear that deep, I mean, I know Tracy is wearing this beautiful blue today that just communicates calmness. There's trust there with the color blue. And so understanding the principles of colors and style, you can create that wardrobe. And so that's what I had to bring a bit of a new perspective. And I think that's what I had to unlearn. That we asked, what did I need to unlearn? Well, I just assumed everybody knew these type of things, you know? And it's no, I actually had to go back and say, okay, let's lay down some basic principles. And that's what I've now also doing in today, even in Amsterdam, is some good foundational principles.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nerine. Thanks.
Amazing. Thanks, Nerine.
No,
go ahead, Cheryl.
No, go for it.
I think you know, there are quite a lot of similarities despite really nice different experiences amongst the five of you today. And I think you know, Lauren, knowing that you've spent a bit of time in the Middle East, and I think had quite an interesting journey at the beginning, and then a bit of a pivotal transition sort of halfway through, it would be great to extend, you know, this cultural adaptation that both you and Nerine had to go through. So yeah, I think curious to know about your experience, what happened before you were officially ready, when you might have been a little bit apprehensive to do so as part of your journey.
I suppose there's two layers to that to answer that question. In terms of the cultural adaptations in the Middle East, I think one of the biggest things it was actually quite difficult to learn was that your opinion wasn't appreciated as a female in a high level. And obviously coming from SA, we enjoy a lot of freedoms. Freedom of being able to speak our mind when we want to, how we want to, the way we feel we need to. And I worked in a couple of places here, at least a little bit earlier in my career, but I was still figuring out how things work in this place. I came across some pretty difficult circumstances where I actually got sidelined because I would push back when I thought some of the practices that were happening in some of the companies were, I would even venture onto infringing on human rights. And you realize pretty quickly that because you're in the Middle East, in certain places, there's no labor unions. There are, you know, the labor practices are still being developed. And it's a case of, if you manage to piss somebody off, you will be fired, and that's the end of it. And there is no one to complain to. And that just is what it is. So you learn pretty quickly in different places to adapt. And it's not necessarily that you want to go and take your whole personality and put it back in a box, but you've just got to be a little bit more strategic about how you deal with people. And you learn different nuances in how you deal with people. So you effectively land up getting what you want to get done. You just get it done differently.
Absolutely.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It was great from an emotional growth perspective, right? To answer the second part of your question, you know, going to the Middle East, I wasn't scared about doing that. That wasn't even a big deal for me at the time because I'd done what I wanted to do in South Africa and it was a new adventure and I hadn't even researched it. I mean, it was probably the worst thing I could have done because I landed up really having a tough time in the beginning. But it wasn't the thing that made me scared. The thing that made me scared was still in SA, being a youngster about probably about 10 years ago. And I got approached by a CEO of one of the major telcos. And he's like, I'm starting up a business, been following you, want you to come and join as a co-founder. And obviously as a youngster and you're ambitious and you want to go and do things, I was like, yes, let's do it. Why not? And very quickly, I landed up going and joining him on a bunch of sales calls. And he was extremely confident, a hell of a tall, enormous human being. So he had quite a presence every time he walked into a thing. And I was about the height of his kneecaps. So I kind of made my way behind him as I did. But I think the thing that struck me the most in those moments was the way that he was speaking to people. I didn't understand. Because at the time I was only kind of freshly in sales and marketing and I hadn't really lived life and gotten experience in business and all that kind of stuff, and words were thrown around like cash flow and all these things. And I actually sat there and, you know, talking to your point, Nerine, I was like, the imposter syndrome was insane. And I said, I have no business being here. I have no idea what these people are talking about. But I think with imposter syndrome, and personally, it is then become, when you feel like that, it then becomes your responsibility to do something about it. So the part that was scary was I realized walking out of that meeting, I never want to feel like that again. I never want to sit there and not know what's going on and not understand what people are talking about, because then I have no business being here. And it's true. So I then applied to do an MBA, which was really scary because I didn't take maths to matric. And then you look at the MBA and you got financial accounting and all these corporate finance and stats. That was scary. Because then I was going to kind of put my money where my mouth is. I was going to have to find a way to do this. I was going to have to study in the evenings. You know, you've got life, you've got work, you've got all those kind of things, and you start taking on a massive commitment for 2 years part-time. That was scary. But also, you know, I suppose at the end of the day, if you feel like an imposter and you think that there is something that you can do to counter that, if it is within your control, then it is your responsibility to go do something about it. And to be honest, I've never felt ignorant again in a marketing, in a meeting after all of that. So, yeah.
That's good. Lauren, I just want to poke you a little bit more on that. Not only did you find yourself in a country, like you mentioned, that didn't necessarily have the freedom for women to speak and have necessarily a voice, but the industry you found yourself in, you've been forging strategic relationships with Formula One, Premier League teams, which is spaces that are predominantly dominated or have interest by men mostly, right? How did you find leading with feminine energy? And did you find a space to lead with feminine energy within those spaces?
So I don't really think in terms of feminine and masculine energy from the way that I operate. It's more about how you deal with people and the values. So when I'm dealing in a male-dominated space, it was more about understanding what's important to people. Everybody wants to feel heard. everybody wants to feel valuable. Everyone wants a moment to have their say. And I think that operates across male and female. So for me, it was probably finding a couple of, so just to be clear, when I was dealing with the Formula One guys and the Premier League, etc., I had some agencies involved that I was working with. And the second part of that is finding people who bridge the gap that you trust. So I was working with an agency who was led by a guy, who is led by a guy, and he's fantastic. And he was, and still is, incredibly encouraging and inclusive. So while I was dealing with him and he was dealing with a lot of the other kind of the mana and the other side, he included me in everything. So I didn't have to fight my way for a say because he naturally brought me to the table in those conversations. So I don't think leadership is never something you do on your own.
Absolutely.
You've got to find the right people who will either bring you to the table or you create your own table, like the Lekker Network is doing. We've now created our own table.
Fantastic.
I just want to jump in, if I might. May I?
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
Please.
No, I'm just curious about some of the labels that we've been throwing around in this call. And, I am cognizant that we have, a couple, well, maybe 100 people on this call. And I'm just wondering, we all hold these ideas differently in the mind. What does it mean to be a woman today? What does it mean to be me in the world today if I happen to identify as a woman? I think, again, things like imposter syndrome is, what does that mean to me? I think that matters most. So not what does it mean to everyone, or how does society define imposter syndrome? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to me? And why am I encountering myself as an imposter in a room? Because it is not felt or lived in the inner world experience in the same way for every person. And so when I look at all of us in this room, and I think there are about 100 of us here, I see as if we were in an orchestra. And if you could imagine with me 100 different instruments, and every instrument plays its own music, notes and keys that nobody else can play. So every person's mind is this construct that is so unique to them. And so being a man or a woman is one but label of how you see yourself, your self-perception, and how you bring yourself to this table, which I call humanity's table, because, well, really, we are all at that collective table. And so I'm always very, it triggers me actually when I hear labels, because I wonder, well, how do you feel about it as an individual? That matters much more to me than what I think it is or how we collectively experience it, because we almost have to make a lot of hypotheses really in every person's sort of notion of what does it mean to be a woman, or what is feminine energy, or what is imposter syndrome. It actually means, if there's 100 of us in the room, there are 100 different experiences of those things, and there's 100 different definitions of those things, and there's 100 different constructs, inner world constructs, mental constructs, psychological constructs of those very things. And for us to really hold space for that, we'd have to literally dive into everyone's mind individually to unpack, what does it mean to you? What is it? Because I personally, when I think of my own journey, I don't see myself as being a woman who needs to be given a seat anywhere, to be honest. I don't think that women need to be empowered. I think women are powerful. They just don't know it yet. I really do think so. They have it buried within them, and it's yet to find expression in that orchestra. I really do not think that personally one can be an imposter. One is only an imposter to themselves, for example, which is quite a big statement. But I remember feeling, when I lived in Switzerland for, it was 15 years of my life, I remember feeling estranged from myself. So almost as if I was an imposter in my own body. So I didn't know this woman. Who is this Michelle? And that was the task. Who am I? How might I unravel myself so that when I do step into a room, I know parts of myself, not all, because that is a journey that we will endeavor and nurture and cultivate till we die. But in essence, I think that estrangement from myself, or being an imposter within myself, feeling like, Michelle, who is this person? That really is great data, because it's telling you, hey, there's work to be done. There's inner reflection to be done. There's inner cultivation to be done. There's inner growth that is beckoning you to step into that reflective space. And so I'm always very cautious when we we label things, and when we assume, it's a collective experience. I think every woman experiences these things differently and defines them differently, and also navigates them differently.
Thank you, Michelle. I think that is the reminder that we need, that we're all in such unique situations. These terms can absolutely mean such different things to all of us. All 125 of us on the call, that's where we are at the moment. So it's quite interesting to think about what the symphony or cacophony of all of us together would sound like, but without a doubt, everybody's bringing their own sound, their own flavor, their own energy to each of these terms. And yeah, like I said earlier, I think we would have to have quite a few more of these to really get down to each person's individual take, but it's a very helpful reminder. Thank you for that. Thandi, I would love to hear from you. I know you've had an incredible journey, and I think would love to pose this key question to you about what's one thing that you did when you were scared, and are so glad that you didn't wait until you felt quote unquote ready, in whatever way ready felt like for you at that point in time.
Thanks, Madeleine. So I've been listening to my fellow panelists, and you guys all speak so beautifully and so eloquently, and everything that you say is so thought through and smart. And all I could think about was my story about when I was when I did something and I didn't wait to be ready. The truth of it at the beginning was that I was broke. So I had to do it out of pure desperation. There wasn't any, really clean and really thought through plan. I was a single mom at 35, broke. I think my sister's on the call, so she can actually attest to this. Amazing. And I had to figure out this life thing, because my parents had spent a lot of money on schools, but I was already divorced, and I had I think it was like 5 at the time, and I couldn't believe where my life had come to. And through God's grace, I got this call from L'Oreal, and I was telling Madeleine during our prep call how I hung up on the poor HR lady like 3 times, because I thought to myself, why would L'Oreal want to call somebody like me? Where did they even find me? But they did. And I was very fortunate that I landed in a place that was really played into my entrepreneurial spirit, but I could do this time with somebody else's money. So it was a beautiful balance. And I was, so I started off with a team of 6 people. I had never worked in beauty. I had never worked on hair. I had worked in infant nutrition, but the call was there. L'Oreal wanted me to come onto the team. And because I needed the money and I needed to put food on the table, was I ready? No. Did I have to trust that I had enough to give to do the job? Yes. And it was through that journey, then I had to start to figure out what did they see in me that I didn't see in me. And through my journey, these experiences have unpacked this way. So I started off in a role called a business unit manager, looked after a team of 6. And about 2 years later, I was asked to run the whole commercial division. And I was looking after a team of, I think it was 40 salespeople. It was crazy to me. I couldn't even pronounce half of the brands that I was asked to sell. But what I really played into was, I think I have a gift that God's given me, which is the ability to be okay with what I don't know. So I use a lot of my humility. When I don't know, I tell my team, listen, you guys are more experienced than I am. How do I use my position of power to help you do your job better? And very much, I think it was to what Michelle was saying. So Michelle, I used to say to my team that everybody is a puzzle piece. So yes, we've got hierarchy because of how organizations work, but because I've got a fancier title than you, am not more important. Without you, I don't even have a job. So we are all puzzle pieces. And if we are all not there, this puzzle doesn't work. And that's honestly what's helped me in my career. I'm a lover of humans. I'm a lover of people. I'm a lover of bringing people up as I rise. Honestly, that's what gives me the most satisfaction. L'Oreal, being a very people-driven organization, has recognized that. And that's why, I have the position I am today as the head of corporate affairs. But still today, did I feel ready for that position? No, I'd never studied corporate affairs. I'd never studied comms. But L'Oreal is an environment where it throws you into the deep end and it hopes you can swim. Luckily, we could. And to also what Lauren had said, you know, if you feel like you are not able, then it is your responsibility to then go and make sure you empower yourself. So all of these roles that I've had, I was not ready for them. I was not, even I doubted why not somebody who was quote unquote more experienced. But I've seen that sometimes it's not, you know, when we look at ourselves, and I think not necessarily as women, but maybe as people, and not to, you know, just to Michelle's point, not to label everyone with the one label, but I think we tend to underestimate ourselves. We are so hard on ourselves. We see beauty, we see intelligence, we see magic in others, and sometimes we struggle. Well, I know I struggle to say to myself. So I've gone into these positions thinking, you know, they see something in me. And now that I'm here, what can I do to help others see the magic in themselves? And I cannot tell you how much joy that gives me. So that's been a little bit of my journey. And, you know, even being on a panel like this, I look at these women and I listen to you guys speak and I'm like, geez, Louise, don't you guys come and apply for my job because Jesus.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh,
That was so well said, Thandi. I think what came to my mind as you were speaking is readiness doesn't come to us, right? But clarity does come to us after action.
100%.
So it's only once we take those acts and we take those steps forward, can the path forward sometimes be clear. In times where we can't really see where it's going to go, we just do know we want a different direction or path or reality at the moment here. Thank you for sharing.
Just a thought, probably something that taps into Michelle and Thandi as well. So I remember hearing somebody say this to me one day. They were like, either there's two things in life. You can either create opportunities yourself, or you can get yourself ready to be able to identify when one presents itself and then jump. And that was it, because I think a lot of people feel a lot of pressure about not being able to create a lot of things. They might not have access to resources and all that kind of stuff. But if you work on yourself, you get yourself to a position where you're kind of angling and you've done what you needed to do in terms of your building your self-esteem, et cetera, et cetera. So when somebody like L'Oreal phones you and you're like, hell yes. I'll take it and I'll figure it out on the way because I can.
Absolutely.
Good for you.
I just want to dive in, if I might, to what Thandi said. It really was fascinating to hear someone articulate their personal experience so rawly and real, in such a real way, because it captures this essence of learning from one's experience. Thandi's experiences are hers. They're in her inner world. And when you engage that realm, that's when you tap into insight that actually moves you forward. It propels you forward boldly and courageously. And also that part about everyone being a puzzle piece, or in my case, the instrument, that instrument attuning themselves, cultivating themselves consistently, investing in themselves, knowing themselves, and leading from that place, pulling up a seat and making themselves, you know, available to that collective, serving, transcending themselves, and helping others see their magic. I think, Thandi, you know, that resonates so deeply, and it's so beautiful to hear leadership that sees that magic in everyone. But first, one has to see their own magic first, I believe, before they can identify it and really notice and appreciate the wonder of another human being. Because again, when one sees their own wondrous spirit, their own enduring spirit, their own story, the light and the dark in their stories, when they're able to make sense of their own complexities and come to know themselves, they realize, oh my goodness, I should literally bow right now. I'm standing with another person who's as layered and as complex and as real, light and dark, you know, just nuanced, who has a sound of their own. And I think appreciating each other and the essence of an individual, every time you walk alongside someone or meet someone, to just literally bow at their presence, because you are encountering someone you'll never encounter again. You're encountering a story you're yet to unfold and discover and learn from. And so It is always an honor, I think, to meet another, to be part of such panels, to be part of such experiences that involve humans, because humans are wondrous. They truly are.
I'm desperate to jump in and say something, because we've spoken so much about being ready. And just like you, Thandi, I haven't felt ready for so many things, and it's scary, right? And I'm thinking, but do you know what? You don't ever feel ready. I think what you have to feel is willing. That's it. If you can be willing, you learn, and then you become ready. Because ready is a big word, right? Ready means different things to different people. Am I ready? Yes. Am I capable? Oh, I don't know. Let's find out. So I think it's that willingness, and tapping, leaning into the fear. That's so important, and it's okay to be a little bit scared. I was nervous coming on this call and it's okay. I'm here. I showed up. I'm listening. I'm learning. I'm loving it. I love that we're celebrating this. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, thank you so much. I think also, Tracy, I know, when we chatted, you mentioned that you have acknowledged the importance of feeling the fear and then just doing it anyway, like being completely in touch and presence with that uncertainty and fear. And I know you've also had an incredible experience in starting your own business. I think it would be great to just get a snapshot of your story as well and hear from you a little bit more.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's hard to think where to start, but it's just, again, going back to that being willing and taking that leap. Michelle, I love that you don't like labels. I agree with you. Labels can be harmful. And tapping into individual power matters. What I feel is so important in our environment, especially in the workplace, is authenticity, but feeling comfortable, and that it's an environment where you can be authentic and feel you can be your natural self, right? And the truth is, so I've been in recruitment for 20 years. I've lived and breathed recruitment my whole life. I'm really passionate about helping people find jobs. There's such satisfaction in that. It feels like a calling. It's a really exhausting job, but I love it. And the reality is that, unfortunately, I've had experiences in my work where I have seen discrimination against women, and I've felt it, and it's a tough thing to witness. I think we still have a long way as a society to embrace women in the workplace. I really do. I was thinking about some stats that scared me. And do you know that in South Africa, up until 1984, women were legally regarded as minors, and they weren't allowed to have their own bank accounts without their husband's consent. They weren't allowed to, sign contracts or have their own mortgage. And I'm going to give my age away, but that is after I was born. That is after I was born that women were allowed to open their own, married women were allowed to open their own bank accounts. So I feel really, really passionate about this topic, and the corporate place, the workplace, having a good space where we can be our authentic selves, especially as females. And yeah, I feel really, really strongly about it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tracy. The craziest thing is I think we've gotten through about a quarter of the questions that we had prepped, but I had a feeling that was the way this conversation was going to go after chatting and meeting to you. So I just think it's definitely meant to be that this led to so many different tangents and ideas and other things to explore. We have had some two really interesting questions come in through the Q&A.
Yeah.
And I would actually, I think these are so important. I'd love to just take a moment to pose these to the five of you panelists, and see what we can do to answer some of these questions, see how many we can get through. They're very, They're meaty. So I'll just start with the first one and see where we go. All right. So first off, what advice would you give to a single mom of 45 looking to make a career change in order to provide for her family, but keeping in mind that I would need to find a job that allows me to be there for my children? The greatest fear is that I can't fail. There's no second salary in the house to fall back on. That's quite a big one, quite a real one.
If I can jump in there to make a comment, I think the last part of what she said there is that she can't fail. And that was one thing, you know, when I was thinking about some of what you guys were saying, and it's, what is that one belief that you had to unlearn to step into your power? And at least for me, it was that realizing that no one's coming to save you. And that's a really harsh way to think about things. But I can't tell you, once you acknowledge that you have the power to get everything done yourself, that will unlock the most unbelievable resource within yourself. And although I can't give an answer to how you go about doing that, it just acknowledging that no one else is going to do it. It's a way of marshaling yourself to become an executor, to become a hustler, it just fuels this fire. If you had someone to kind of lean on, it's easier, and you don't have the impetus. It's not desperate. I mean, I've certainly been desperate in Dubai. I also landed up without anything. I landed up sharing a couch in someone's house. And when it's just you, me, myself, and I, that has to get going, you can do it. You can do it. You'd be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in on the career change there, because I've been in recruitment my whole life. It is a scary thing to do a career change. You've probably done it already. The person who's talking about this to provide for her children. The research matters. There are a lot of companies that understand that embracing women as caregivers, you untapping half of your talent pool by embracing women who have the need to look after their children. But do your research. You know, I've seen the flip side of that also, where there's no flexibility, but flexibility matters. So do your research about companies, tap into people in the industry who've got experience with things like that, who are sympathetic and understanding. Get some good advice, practical advice, because the bottom line is, when you have kids and you have to pay the groceries, there's no alternative. You know, you have to keep those bills coming in. So, you know, if you want to get in touch with me, I'll give you some advice if I can. I'll help with some advice. But yeah, just keep at it and find the career that's right for you. That matters too, because you're going to bring your best self when you do that.
Lovely. I see there are also some suggestions coming in the Q&A. Thank you to our audience for also wanting to support. Somebody suggested looking at Recruit My Mom, which I think is a local company that's well positioned to help single moms find flexible work. And then there's also a suggestion to check out the 5-hour club, school hour jobs that work for parents. So I think it seems like there are a couple at least of solutions that might be applicable or might be inspirational or interesting to find out. We've got some more incredible questions coming through. I think I'm going to go for another heavy-hitting one here. And here we go. Is the pressure for women to quote unquote balance it all, motherhood, career, personal identity, a myth? Should we rather accept that different seasons of life demand intentional imbalance, and that being a woman is not defined only by being a mother or a caregiver? I think that's quite a real one.
I'd love to jump in there if I might. Again,
Absolutely,
I'd love to. I wish I could have a moment with this person, you know, face to face in a room, and I'd literally ask this bold, courageous woman who shared this question with all of us. What does it mean to her? What does that statement mean to you? What does it trigger? How does it make you feel? Does it make you feel anxious, fearful, angry, resentful? Does it make you feel shame? Let's explore those dimensions. Once we go there, I think, and unpack, what does that mean to you? I think we can start making headway in navigating the world anew, navigating a world from a place where I know how I want to take up my role. And I'm leveraging my essence and my music to transcend wherever or from wherever I happen to be arising from. I think, again, there's always going to be nuances in this experience. Labels, again, I find are very, very challenging because they literally are held in the mind differently. They're held in the body differently. They influence how you engage with the world as well. So these narratives become almost your ChatGPT. They help you make sense of the world. And so if your mind and the way you've almost sort of defined that idea in the mind, if it is women need support in this realm, or women should, get special attention in certain realms, or we need someone to empower us, I think we almost then start to believe that that can't be cultivated from ourselves within. And I think that almost blurs the reality that ultimately your agency will define where you go, your sense of who you are and knowing yourself and actually digging into the darkest parts of yourself is where you find that resilience, where you find that enduring spirit, and where you find confirmation that you will rise and you will endure and you will come out on the other side. And I think, again, these narratives are personally defining, and I think it's important to challenge the narrative that you hold true and to get on the balcony and ask, what does it mean to me to be a woman? What does it mean to me to be a mother? I myself am a mother of 3, and I've been at various board tables and as an entrepreneur as well. And I think ultimately it's how I feel about these terms that changes everything. Because when I step into a room, knowing that, yes, I am a mother, but in my mind, when I think of being a mother, I also think, well, this is a shared task. I'm a parent, and my husband and I are responsible for these lives we've chosen to bring into the world. So that becomes a shared task, and it doesn't feel so anxiety inducing because it's our task, it's shared. And if I think about the fact that I would like to travel, for example, to make a board meeting that's, at an unusual hour, I always think, well, how can I leverage the relationship that I have? Because when my husband requires the same support, he will leverage the relationship that we've built in order to support his journey and vice versa. And so when I think of myself as a woman and I think of myself in a relationship or as a mother, the way I hold it in the mind actually influences how I engage with the world and how I shape my journey and how I lead out there. And so I think many times, and having coached leaders, in my, just a little while ago, I used to coach and advise. Again, I'm listening very, very closely to reflections and questions because they give us a window into how does this person see themselves, right? How do they see themselves in the world? And I think it's important we pay attention to those things because they literally influence how you engage with the world and how you lead. So defining women, what does it mean to me? Imposter, what does it mean to me? What does it mean to me to be a woman at a board table? What does it mean to me? Not what does it mean to us? What does it mean to me? That will change the way you meet the other, the way you meet the environment, the way you meet a corporate, or how you meet life in general.
Beautifully said. Thanks, Michelle. And I think what makes answering that question even more interesting is that it actually came from a man. And to your point of labels should not be a thing, and we see each other as humans as opposed to within certain boxes. So yeah, coming from a male, thank you for that. We have 5 minutes left of this conversation. Madeline, should we take one more question before we wrap up?
Absolutely. Sherelle, why don't you pick? I actually don't know how I'm going to pick between these ones that have come in now.
There's a question, or I don't know if it's a question yet, but it says, I remain conflicted about equality for women. It's the subtle difference between equality for all and equality for women. Maybe naive, but I would really like to see us fight for equality for all, not just women. I feel like there are large groups of people who are marginalized, not just women. Anybody want to comment on that? Was it a question?
If I may,
Sure.
so I don't know if I have an answer, but I can just say, as a mother of a boy, my son is now 18, doing matric, and we were having a conversation the other night, and he was telling me about, some of the challenges he's having with the young ladies. And he was saying to me that, Mom, I know that you also advocate for, women to move up in the corporate world and, all of that. But sometimes I feel like young men like me are not seen. Mm-hmm. And this was my child. And so I suppose what I'm just saying is that it's true. It's true that we do need to fight for all, because I think, personally, I am very passionate about women as well. Having seen how my parents grew up and my mom and seeing what people go through in the workplace and how we're not always treated the same as men and all sorts of different things. But I forget that I have a young man in my home who is feeling unseen. So it's made me sit back a little bit and think about how I'm approaching this whole way of thinking. So yes, I agree with the person who's raised the question. It's very, very valid.
I'm going to jump into, Thandi, when you spoke about your son. I have a 7-year-old son, and he was not allowed to join a yoga club because he was a boy. It did not sit well with me, especially because of the work that I do. I feel so strongly about equality for people, And yes, we can never forget that, inequality exists in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. And I think I don't know where it came from, but silence is tacit approval. And I agree with that so much. I don't think we should sit and be silent. I think we need to speak up. And that's why I'm so proud to be part of a panel of women like this who speak up, really. And clearly we all, have so many different experiences and perspectives. I'm finding it fascinating listening to everybody. And I think that's the bottom line, is let's listen. And a lot of people have that ability and power, but I do think it is something that women do well, is we listen.
Thank you so much, ladies. We have 1 minute to go. So we're just going to wrap this up. I think start off by just a few takeaways is that we're not meant to have labels. See people as people. And whenever you're looking for the answers, dig deep, because the power without the permission that's required truly is within us all. And it's just about meeting that person that's deep in there, facing them with courage and doing with conviction and belief in oneself. So to our panel members, what an honor. Thank you so much for joining us. To my host with the most, Madeleine, thank you. You're all kinds of fantastic. This is an awesome conversation and remarkable to do it alongside you. To our listeners at home, let us know if these are the type of conversations you want to hear more of from the phenomenal women within the Lekker Network. And over and above that, if you feel like you just want to grab a coffee or connect, please reach out to myself or Madeleine. We are happy to engage you, and we'd love to have more conversations like this. So drop us a LinkedIn. And from us at the Lekker Network, bringing Mzansi to the world, to business connections, opportunities, and specifically meaningful relationships. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a good one further.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.